So thank you guys for coming. So the intent here is really to talk about making your own brewing ingredients because, and this is something that Glenn and I have talked about, and he's, I've kind of been thinking about this more and more and more, but when I met Glenn, it sparked kind of like this solid, yes, I need to start using things other than hops, other than just malts, malted barley, because historically it has been done really more than what we're doing now. I would say gruits and unhopped beers are older than hopped beers, for sure, because it was just 1516 when the Reichsgebot German purity law came around. And so now we're on that wave. But everything before then is all very interesting. So, cool. So yeah, so the intent here, really, just like anything home brewing, is to be more involved with the end product. Because when you grow your own stuff, the interesting thing too is that, year to year, and this, it's kind of like the idea, I think the word is terroir, or terroir. It's a French wine term, meaning that the grapes from a certain area in the vineyard give a certain character, a certain flavor. And so they'll make wines based on that. Even though the grape varieties may be the same, the flavor is different. Same thing applies to when you grow your own beer ingredients. The soil you have, how you treat it, is going to affect the outcome. Especially since we're talking mainly about herbs today. The oil content is going to be affected by what you do to the soil, how you treat the plants, how much you water it, how much sun it gets. So year to year, you can get variation. But it's just like anything, especially if you have like a yeast culture that you maintain, you kind of get used to that. And you grow it, and you maybe save seeds from this ingredient and plant that because this plant had something that was really good about it. It's like selecting certain yeast that tastes really good. You're gonna kind of, over time, you kind of live with that culture. It's part of your life. And so that's kind of the neat thing here as far as being in control. Obviously exploring new flavors, because if you've never brewed something with bee balm before, what does it taste like? You're gonna find out, So and that's the fun part of it, Obviously, the freshness, because if you were to buy any of these ingredients we're talking about today, you don't necessarily know where it came from, how fresh it is. So if you make a beer with something you bought, an ingredient you bought, maybe that's not really what it could taste like. You're like, I don't like what bee balm tastes like in a beer. Well, if you brew it yourself, you're going to have a better idea of if you do or not. So that's kind of cool. Obviously, I talked about history. That's part of it, figuring out, kind of going back to ancient roots and seeing what beers used to taste like. And we get to recreate that, whereas you can't really commercially get a whole lot of stuff. So again, we're talking today about planting, harvesting, storage. And then the final thing, and it's not any of the other slides are really talking about this, but when we're talking about gardening, you want to make sure the soil continues to have good stuff in it. So the other part is taking what's left over from your brewing process and then composting that. So the idea is having a spot where you can go ahead and put those organic materials to let them break down so you can use them in the garden again. So, obviously we all have met through the club, but just general, as far as a farmer, this is our farm logo, which is kind of cool. Our friend at home made this for us. And we've actually grown this kind of corn before, which is really cool. It's all like multicolored. Yeah, it's awesome. It is awesome. It's really awesome. I'm a farmer, amongst other things. The main thing that I farm is industrial hemp. This will be the third year. I just got my license for it. So the cool thing is we've got a lot of, this will be the big year where we actually bring a lot of products to market, food products specifically. So that'll be cool. The other thing is beer ingredients. Getting bigger into that, I brewed a beer with a beard iris called La Fortune, which is really a gruit. It's got a little bit of hops, but mostly sweet goldenrod and smooth sumac. And so those are ingredients that I've provided. I've also provided some juniper berries to Von Seitz, Alex Von Seitz, for Von Seitz theoreticals. And so So getting more into beer ingredients, that's definitely, I actually have several breweries that want coriander from our farm this year. So getting more into making beer ingredients, which is super cool. I've been home brewing for over 7 years, so I know a thing or two, a thing or three. These are actually the juniper berries that I harvested. They're awesome. Actually, wish I brought some today. They've got very much a piney, kind of resinous, and hoppy kind of character. Very cool. I actually made a beer that, this beer, not that beer, this beer actually had juniper berries in it. So use some from that batch. So when that comes through, we'll taste it at the beer meeting, and I'll say what you think. Anywho, so who here has brewed before? Everybody. Great. That's okay.
I'd like to get into it, yeah.
So I don't really have to go over the process, which is great, which is fine. Maybe for the camera, you've got taking malted grain, typically grinding it up into a grist. This is all grain. Adding warm water to extract the sugar, which happens through an enzymatic process. Getting the liquid, boiling it with hops to bitter it, to balance out the sweetness, ferment it with yeast, and then drink it after it's carbonated, or maybe not, depending on what you're doing. Anything you guys wanted to pick up from this specifically, just so I can kind of think of that while I'm going through this here?
Anything you provide.
Why make your own ingredients? To explore the new flavors, obviously, control freshness, get in touch with what makes beer beer, and history. I think we kind of talked about those quite a bit. So this is the one carbohydrate that I've covered. I will mention that I have made kits of all the ingredients except for hop rhizomes, but I will be talking about hops. So all of these, except for hops that I talk about today, are included in these kits, which I'm selling. Amaranth specifically is it's a grain product. So these are all seed heads that are full of grains. The cool thing about it is, I'll go to harvesting right here. When they start falling out of the head, you know it's ready. So they'll just want to kind of just fall out. That also will tell you this thing will self-seed. It's a pretty rugged plant. This will take over an area. So make sure you're kind of prepared for that when you plant. So it loves heat and drought. It's drought tolerant, which is great, because where we are, it's hot. Sometimes in the summer it can be real dry. So that's once it's established. So just kind of get it going. Probably about 6 inches tall. It's probably, because usually a plant will have the same, whatever height above the ground, it's got the same amount of roots underneath, if not more. So once it's kind of established itself that way, go with it. So plant 1 to 2 weeks after the last frost. Again, it does not like the cold, so you want to, and with our summers being pretty long, really, you could easily plant it a month from now and you'll be fine. Okay. So you want to sow them directly in the soil, 1/8 to 1/4 inch deep. 3 seeds every 6 inches, 12-inch rows, so 12 inches apart, and then 3 seeds every 6 inches. So boom, 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 like that. And then once they're 1 inch tall, you thin it out. So whichever one's the best of those 3, thin it out to 1 plant every 6 inches. So yeah, we talked about, it's right there. So yeah, ready to harvest when the seeds fall out of the head. We got that there twice, which is great. And it says when disturbed, so if you kind of like bump the seed head and they come out, great, you're ready. So for where we're at, the biggest concern is if you don't, because again, we do have rain pretty regularly. If it's falling out of the head, I would recommend going ahead and cutting the seed head off from the rest of the plant and then hang it up somewhere to dry. Because if it gets rained on, it could actually cause a mold issue, and then you lose your seed crop. So when you hang it up to dry, make sure you have something underneath, like a pan, that will catch anything that falls out. So once you've got your plant here, what do you do with it? And this is cool because this is actually in pops like popcorn. You can actually take a dry pot, meaning no oil, and put your amaranth in there. You do a little bit at a time, so you don't want like a layer like this because it'll burn when you're popping it. If you have a big pot like this, just have a thin layer over the bottom, and it's just gonna, and so you'll heat up the pot until you can take like a drop of water, flick it on there, and it just, you know. So throw that in there. You can use a spoon, or you can just shake the pot, and those little suckers will start popping like crazy. But just add to a mash, you know, just like you normally would, because the popping is going to open up the seeds so that, and dry it out a bit so the enzymes can go at the starches, break that down. So it contributes a nutty flavor. So this would be great for like a nut brown ale for sure. So I would kind of go on the side of estimating that like you'll get so like 1028, so 1.028 points of gravity from like a pound of this.
Okay.
So you're going to have to play with it though, because again, because you're creating the crop yourself and you're not a lab, you're just going to have to kind of figure out what you're starting with as far as grain goes, the malt bill, and then see where you end up with your mash. All right, cool. So, yeah, going into the actual flavoring side of things. So the amaranth was a carbohydrate to get sugars, which turns into alcohol by the yeast. B-bomb is something that's, so all of these have been used in beer historically. So I'll go there. It's not like this is the first time anyone's ever done it. B-bomb is definitely one of those things. Cool thing is it's a pollinator attractor. It's called B-bomb for a reason, so you'll get hummingbirds, butterflies, bees, which is great for other things in a garden. It's in the mint family, and you'll find that's a common theme. There's a lot of things here. I think 3 of the 4 that I covered here are from the mint family. The cool thing, too, is all of these really like full sun or partial shade. But yeah, full sun, so it likes to get a whole bunch of phytonutrients there. Talk about attracts pollinators. So 2 to 4 weeks after the last frost, so kind of like the amaranth, it likes things on the warmer side. They do well starting inside, so if you have like some little pots that you start them in, to give them kind of a head start. Once you put them in the ground outside, they'll just rock and roll. So these go 1/16 inch deep, 5 seeds every 12 inches, and then after an inch tall, thin them out to 1 every 12 inches. So they get pretty big. They need plenty of room. One thing I'll cover is, so obviously some plants don't do well when they're crowded. That's why the thinning is important, because you've got all these seeds, whichever one's the strongest one, you thin out all the others. Let the strongest one rock and roll. And you've got to have enough room for that guy to go, because if you plant them too close, they won't be as strong. Partially because they'll be competing for nutrients in the soil, and then also it's not going to have enough room to kind of be the plant it could be. They're all going to be trying to like out-compete each other upwards, whereas this thing is going to more kind of bush out. So, so this guy likes, the other one is cool with any soil. Amaranth is rugged. You should be able to grow that. If you can't, you might overwater, Honestly. This stuff likes rich, moist soil. So you're probably going to plant this in a section away from the amaranth, okay? With lots of organic matter. So it's a feeder, likes to feed a lot. To harvest it, as soon as the flower blooms, you cut it back to an inch from the ground. So essentially an inch up, cut it there, and then you can hang it up to dry. What that's going to do is it's going to promote reblooming. So you're kind of stressing the plant out, because blooming is, I want to reproduce. So you cut it back, it's like, oh no, I need to reproduce. So it's going to keep coming back. So you'll have a good supply of this stuff. What do you do with bee balm? The leaves have a menthol scent and an astringent flavor. So in the mint family, menthol, that's kind of the idea there. So they were used as a tea substitute during the American Revolution. So this is something where people were drinking it as a hot tea. So that's going to be a good thing to try with your bee balm, is to go ahead and once you've tried it out, make a pot of tea. And then you'll get an idea of the flavor. All right, and then you can say, what do I want to do with this? Okay. So you can use up to 1 ounce at the end of the boil for a bitter, minty flavor and a menthol aroma. So since 1 ounce at the end of the boil and you're getting bitterness, that means that if you add it at the beginning of the boil, it's going to provide bitterness as well, quite a bit of it. So I would say with any of the ingredients that we're talking about for flavoring, or bittering, start off light. I know Glenn has mentioned that he made a yarrow bomb, Yeah. And so, I mean, the main thing is I want to caution anyone from making a bee bomb, Bee bomb. So, or anything else bomb. So yeah, start off light, especially end of boil stuff, real smart, because you're not going to have it boil as long, so you're not going to extract as much flavor. Questions there? Cool. Chamomile, which we also know from tea. So this is one is in the daisy family, as the image depicts. So it's got an appley scent in the late spring to late summer. So an appley kind of character. Just like neutral to slightly acidic sandy soil to rich loam. This is actually good in the same kind of area where you plant hops. Okay? Because hops are in the same area. They like the acidic, they like something sandy, meaning the water will drain away, has good drainage. Same idea here. So they actually go well together. This bad boy likes full sun to partial shade. So, the idea there is don't plant in a spot where it's not getting any sun or very much sun. You really want to give it somewhere where there's plenty of sun. This guy, you can plant now. So, I mean, the soil here has been workable all winter long. You probably could have planted it a long time ago. But you can plant this guy now. So it does like some coolness. So this stuff, you don't want to like dig a trench to put them in. You just want to put them in on the surface of the soil and press them in. That's it. You don't even need to cover it over. So do 3 seeds every 8 inches. Once they're ½ inch tall, make it 1 every 8 inches. So that's how you thin that out. To harvest it, you pick the flowers when the petals turn back. That's an example of turning back. So you can see when they're young, the petals grow up, and then they turn back like that. That's when you know it's time. What do you do with chamomile? So it is a secret ingredient, which obviously is not a secret now, in an award-winning Belgian white. So that's a good idea, as far as a place to start with this. If you want to highlight it, figure out what you like about it, making a Belgian white's a good place to go with it. It is bitter when boiled, sweet when steeped. So beginning of boil, bitterness, which is cool because if you're looking to make a gruit with no hops, this would be a good guy to start with in the beginning. And then at the end of it, end of the boil, you're going to get that appley, sweet kind of character from it. Again, it would be good once dry to make a tea with it, just like with the bee balm, to figure out what you got. So you can use a quarter ounce to 2 ounces of fresh flowers at the end of the boil for the appley flavor and aroma. At the beginning for bitterness, we talked about that. Cool thing, again, you can use it fresh. The nice thing about drying is that it's going to give you a little bit more control because you're going to have, but I will mention quarter to 2 ounces, that's wet weight, so that's fresh. If you dry it out, you're not going to use that much, or you'll have a chamomile bomb. Right. Coriander. Coriander is also, it's a product of cilantro. So there are varieties of cilantro that are really targeted for making coriander. The one that I've been provided in the kit is perfect. It's one that's very typically used for brewing. So, and actually there's going to be 2 varieties that I grow on the farm this year. One has a lot of like lemon character to it, so I'm pretty excited about that. So I've never grown it, but it'll be cool. Anywho, this guy likes full sun to partial shade like the others. This one is 1 to 2 weeks before the last frost. Planted a ½ inch deep, 3 seeds every 6 inches with 8-inch row spacing. This is like the amaranth that will reseed. Like we've got a bed that's just, like we got all of our coriander last year from a bed that we hadn't planted for like 3 years.
Wow.
So it will come back just fine. Unless you harvest all this seed, you probably won't. There's a lot of it. So keep in mind that the technique here for harvesting is picking the leaves before flowers bloom in late spring. One of the things that can do is kind of stress the plant out. That's another good thing. It's like it's focusing the growth not on leaves, but on flowers and seed. So that's a pretty cool technique. So when the seed is turned brown, that's when you want to gather it. But the key is to do it before they just fall off, before they scatter. So just once it turns that color, that's what you're at. Yeah, it has a sweet clove-like flavor to it. You can use 1/4 ounce to 2 ounces of seeds at the beginning of the boil flavoring. 2 ounces is a lot. And that's 5 gallons. Yeah. I would probably, again, start light. It's a lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah. And I would assume 2 ounces at the beginning of the boil. I haven't done that much at the beginning of the boil, but some stuff's going to kind of boil off, I would assume. But I don't know. I would think that's going to be a bomb. I would go more on the 1/4 ounce side, if not a little less. All right, so this is really cool. Hyssop is a very, it's been known around the world as a very ancient kind of plant. Used to be hung up over the doors in hospitals because it has such a nice aroma. Old school hospitals, they didn't know a whole lot of stuff, and so it kind of smelled bad in there. So this stuff was used to freshen the place up. So it's got a really awesome character. It also attracts pollinators, just like the bee balm, so which is cool. So this rascal, specifically the variety I've got here is Anise hyssop. Again, it likes full sun. But I have here 2-part shade. I would say probably around here it's good to have it somewhere where it can get some shade because it just gets so hot here. So if you have like a bush that lets sunlight through, it'd be good to plant it around there or near a tree. This is also in the mint family. This guy's like the chamomile where you just press it into the soil surface. Do 3 seeds every 10 to 12 inches. And then once they're 1 inch tall, thin it out so you have 1 every 10 to 12 inches. This guy is kind of like the others, so 1 to 2 weeks after the last frost. So light, dry, limey soil. A lot of what we're going to be working with here is really clay soil. So it wouldn't hurt to add some peat moss in there, something to kind of like lighten it up. Or if you have a lime, a lot of people with the clay soil actually add a lime additive, which helps allow the nutrients in the clay. Clay soil is real nutrient rich. It makes it so that's available. So that wouldn't hurt. If you have like a real tough soil, add some lime to it based on the recommendations with the lime, and that would be good for this stuff. It's also a pretty rugged plant. I mean, most kind of medicinal herbs, which these are all, I'm not going into the medicinal prospects or properties, but all these have some like medicinal property to it. So, they're all pretty rugged typically. So moist soil causes it to lose flavor. So this would also be kind of like the amaranth. It likes things to be kind of dry. If you think about it, you stress a plant out, it's going to kind of intensify itself. So that's the idea here too. It would do well around the amaranth. So to harvest it, you want to pick the leaves and flowers when the blossoms open, just like this. That'd be a perfect time for it. What do you do with this stuff? Historically, it's used in medicinal tea as well as brewing. Again, this would be good to make a tea with your dried product to see what it tastes like, what you think about it. So these, I know Benedictine is not something I'm familiar with, but chartreuse is a kind of liqueur, I believe. So that's, if you want to go ahead and buy a bottle of something just to figure out what hyssop is like, well, there you go. Hopefully you'll like it. So you can use 1 ounce of fresh leaves for a 5-gallon batch at the beginning of boil for a menthol flavor. Again, being in the mint family, it's kind of like the bee balm. It's got that kind of backbone of mint. I would probably use more of this at the end of the boil to get some kind of flavor aroma, even dry hop with it. I think that's the one thing I haven't talked about yet. A lot of these I would probably just love to just dry hop with to get a good idea of, okay, what does that character do? When I say dry hop, I mean adding it dry to the fermented beer. All right, so savory. Some people also have heard of summer savory. This is also in the mint family. Surprise. This guy likes rich sandy soil with full sun and even moisture. Again, this would go well with the amaranth and the chamomile. Or was it chamomile? Yeah, I think chamomile was the one. It was also good drainage. So 1 to 2 weeks after late frost, there's a trend there. So at 1/8 inch deep, 3 seeds every 6 to 12 inches. Once it's an inch tall, thin that out to 1 every 6 to 12 inches. So once it's ready to harvest, you'll cut the top 4 inches of the branch that has the flowers once they come into bloom. And so I would say the big thing with this plant, a lot of plants, you want to get them right as they bloom, because what will happen is the bloom will then kind of deteriorate, because what it's doing is it's either accepting pollen or putting out pollen, because it's, the male-female part of the thing is trying to reproduce. So it's going to kind of like do its thing and then die. So you want to catch it when it's just popped up. The top 4 inches, because that's what's actually usable of this plant. This is another photo of that gruit that I made that has the juniper and the coriander in it when I was cooling it. What do you do with savory? You can use 1 ounce of flowers and leaves late in the boil for a peppery flavor and aroma. So 5-gallon batch late in the boil, I would say a great place to start is like 5 minutes to 0 minutes. The peppery character is the thing that's most interesting, I would say. And so this is so the cool thing is, again, these ingredients that we talked about, you can use them in lots of stuff. I actually didn't mention the amaranth. You can actually eat the leaves of the variety that I have here. So it can be used in salads, you can steam it, stir fry. It's a very cool plant. This is, summer savory is used in lots of different seasonings. So you've got a versatile plant. You can make beer with it, you can make food with it, Right? So, but yeah, the peppery flavor and aroma, I think it would also go really well with the other kind of like menthol kind of character, they'll kind of round things out to have several different ingredients together. Similar character of oregano, so if you're familiar with that, it's not going to be the same. The cool thing is that it's going to have its own little thing, just like the anise is like a combination of different flavors and aromas. And then again, 1 ounce is secondary, or so if you've already fermented the beer, take 1 ounce and you put it in there to let the alcohols extract the flavors and the medicinal properties. It'll give that spicy aroma to it. So hops, I left it to the end because, it's got to be in here. So it grows from a rhizome, which is like a root section that remains in the ground. It'll come out year after year if you treat it right. It needs well-drained soil because it doesn't like being wet. I'm going to grab this bad boy. I brought this specifically because it's a fiber pot. It's made of a fabric mesh. And the cool thing about this, so this one is 20 gallons. The reason why I got such a large one, because they come in different sizes, is you want to leave lots of room for the roots. The roots is where the plant will soak up the nutrients and liquids, so you want to give it lots of room there. The idea with this, though, is that because it's all a mesh material, if you've got this outside on a patio or something, it's going to allow excess water to drain off and allow the roots to dry out a little bit. It does not like to be wet all the time. It likes to have wet and dry times. So this is a really awesome thing. The other cool thing is that, looking at the size, you can actually do, it's hard because it's loose, but you can actually do 3 rhizomes in here. So it's room enough for 1, 2, 3. And then the other thing is hops need something to climb on. So you can take some cane pole, bamboo, some kind of wood, and make like a tripod and wire at the top, and they'll just climb up. The main thing that I would recommend is to grow all the same variety would be wise if you're going to do the tripod, because if you do separate varieties of hops, they'll all kind of intermingle, and you don't know what you've got. So it's going to be hard to kind of know what that hop is going to taste like because you don't know what hop you got. If you do 3 different varieties in the same pot, have it so that the trellis is going out, away from each other, so you can have some sense of control there. An 8-foot tall tripod should be plenty. should be enough.
Okay.
So I mentioned the fiber pot. Peat moss is good if you're going to for potting mix because peat moss is acidic, and this stuff likes acidity. You don't want to use any coconut because coconut, like peat moss and coconut, are often used kind of interchangeably.
Yeah.
The coconut though is a moisture, it retains moisture. You don't want that. So stick with the peat or something that has perlite in it. So like a bagged soil has perlite because it helps with drainage. So it likes slightly acidic soil, and it also, you want to add calcium nitrate to it. This is just a nutrient that's important for the hops. We talked about deep roots, 8-foot tall trellis, we got that. So you want to use a complete fertilizer, like Miracle Grow will be fine, unless you want to do something organic, whatever you want to do, as long as it's complete. When it's blooming though, when it's blooming the hop cones, you want to add phosphorus, and it helps with the bloom. As far as pest control around here, this SNS 209 is an all-natural way to control it, and it's actually something that you just put on the soil itself. Another thing you can do is neem oil, which you add to the soapy mixture, but you gotta reapply it like once a week. So if you're into that kind of thing, great. If not, SNS 209 is just fine. The nice thing about organic is that you don't have to worry about anything being on the hops that you're worried about drinking. It's gonna be safe. All right. So as far as hop varieties that work here, Neo-Mexicana is, a lot of people are talking about that because it's native to the out west. Neo-Mexicana, I believe it's New Mexico, is the name is based on that. So essentially it likes it hot, it'll handle dry, and it gets plenty hot here in Tennessee. Anything with a C, so Centennial, Columbus, Cascade, those guys seem to work well here, which is cool. So you've got some options. I do recommend, as far as buying it, local homebrew store if they're selling it, but GreatLakesShops.com, they've got all of these, and they're actually selling the plant, not just the rhizomes. So the hop cone, and obviously I'm not going too in depth because you guys know generally what a hop is, of course. But this flower part of the plant, you want to wait until it's green. You actually pull back the little leaflets here and look for the yellow resin, the lipulin. That's the stuff we're after.
Then lick
it. Eat it.
Eat it.
Yeah, I wouldn't eat it. It's very unpleasant. It's bitter. So you essentially want to pull it back, see the lipulin. They're actually going to be heavy. So you're going to be basing your decision to harvest based on the color, the lipulin, and if it feels heavy. So the important thing is that once you harvest it, you want to remove it from sunlight, because as many people know, beer's in brown bottles because the sunlight, one of the light rays actually makes the hops taste skunky, like literally skunky. And so you want to get them away from the sunlight, dry them with warm, dry air. A fan is good, just as long as there's air circulation. Some people recommend taking a paper bag, putting them in there, taking them up in your attic, and then, because it's hot up there in the summer, and you have to shake it around several times. So you got to go up there and kind of shake it around so that they don't kind of decompose
together
or compost.
Die.
Exactly.
Okay.
I would feel better about putting out like a screen material. Seen some people using like an extension ladder, putting screen material on there, putting the hops on there, fan. That would be good. I would recommend, once dry, you can store in an airtight bag in the freezer until you're ready to use it. Some people do wet hop beers, so you just harvest it and then put it in the boil immediately. I'm not talking about that because it's not something I'm terribly into, but it's something you can do. It gives more of a grassy character for sure because you're using fresh material and there's a lot more moisture in it than when it's dry. So I would err, just like with all of these things, err on the light side because it's a homegrown product and you don't know exactly how much bitterness it's going to give. Or you can go crazy. I'm not against that. I'm just saying it's good to start out light and then go heavy. But I mean, if you like IPAs, just don't add them all at the beginning. That's it. Add them more at the end. That would probably be the recommendation. All right, cool. This is a photo of our hemp from last year.
That's not hot.
That's cannabis. It is not a drug. The THC was 0.04%, so to not have it confused. I'll also point out that there's a lot more material bundled here than I would recommend, only because I had this in a hot, like super hot garage with a fan on it for days. They were hanging from the ceiling and moving around quite a bit. So that's the big thing about drying out these herbs is that you want to have airflow. You don't want them to be stagnant or in still air. It's not preferable. But if you have just a couple of branches together, like let's say 3 or 4 branches of a plant together, hanging, there's going to be enough airflow around them that it's not going to be as big of a deal. When you're harvesting, choose healthy branches. Something that looks good, especially because these are aromatic. You know, if you rub the leaves and it smells good, great. If it looks like it's past its prime, don't fool with it. It's not worth your time because you can grow plenty of it with just one plant. Make sure you cut it when the dew is dry because you're trying to prevent extra moisture from being on there. So like during, in the morning after the sun has gotten a chance to hit it and dry off the leaves. Okay. If there's any diseased leaves, anything that's turned brown, you want to pick that off because in a bundle, that can actually further damage the other healthy leaves. Okay. Anything that looks bad, just don't fool with it or pull it off. You want to shake to remove any insects, like big brown worms or, other bugs, especially because you'll probably be drying inside and you don't want to bring them in there, but especially because, bugs that are on there could continue eating the plant. 4 to 6 stems. I said 3 to 4. 4 to 6 stems is good. The good thing is, if you've got a fan on it, you could have more, just like I did, as long as the air is blowing pretty steadily. Another thing is, if you, what I'm recommending here as well, just something simple, is you take those stems, you put them in a bag that has holes in it, and then bundle the end of it together. So that's a pretty cool way of putting it upside down. So like if you have like a paper bag where the flat bottom is here, and you've got it bundled so it can sit flat like that. Okay. So that works well. There's a lot of different techniques for drying, but that's one of them. This is obviously the one I prefer. Okay. So that's what I got, guys and gals. So any questions? Cool. Awesome. It's been fun, y'all. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for talking. I appreciate it, man.
Nurse was the